my fellow readers. Today I'm going to be talking about Sugar Apple Fairy Tale Volume 2. So it's the continuation of Anne's story. In this one I'll read the synopsis and then talk about my thoughts on what happened. An impossible wish granted. Winter has arrived in the kingdom of Highland, and Anne Halford, aspiring silver sugar master, is struggling to make ends meet. Barely scraping by with her earnings, Anne is worrying about securing lodging for the upcoming holidays when she hears exciting news. The Duke of Filex will award an extraordinary amount of money to whoever makes the best sugar candy according to his wishes. Anne immediately jumps at the opportunity, but finds herself competing against Jonas. The Duke is notoriously difficult to please. Who will win his approval first? So, just to get it out there, if you've seen the anime, this covers that chunk of episodes where we're getting closer to the end, but not quite there yet. So I'm pretty sure that the first 3 volumes are going to be the first season of the anime. So nothing was too new in here, although I think I'm trying to remember with the first part of this one whether that was covered. But anyway, the story starts off where she's trying to make enough money to make do. She keeps getting scammed by people who are not paying her the cost of it, and then she tries to get lodgings, and they're going to overcharge her. She stays for a bit at, oh goodness, I can't remember his name, but the one guy, this guy, Hugh. She stays for a little bit with Hugh, but then is worried about where she's going to go from there, and this opportunity suddenly arises with Filex, and he is looking for a sugar master or student, whatever. He's looking for a crafter to create something very specific for him, and so far everybody's failed. But Anne is so desperate for money, and this is a huge payout that she goes there. And not just Jonas, but there's like some of his cronies from the school that he is now attending. I guess you would call it a school. Anyway, they're around him, but they all have to leave because you're only allowed to stay at the castle if Filex thinks that you have potential. So Anne creates hers, and he sees potential in Anne. So then it's this whole uncovering of why they have to create what they're creating, and can they do it, essentially. And then there's also a lot of development between Anne's relationship with Shale. And that's essentially what happens. And there is a lot to the Duke's story. Quick summary, he wants them to create a sculpture of a fairy that he knew, and that there's paintings of throughout the castle, but at least in one section. It's like a gallery. So they get to look at this portrait gallery, and then they're supposed to create a sculpture that captures her. But nobody's been able to do it the way that he wants. And then the story becomes, why is he obsessed with this, and what is he actually trying to do with this whole story? Is there more to it than just he wants to capture an image of her? And if you understand the way that fairies are created, you might get a hint of what he's trying to do, even though it most likely won't work. And at first, the whole thing with Jonas and Anne isn't, like, he's not terrible to her. He understands that they're both suffering, but then he continues to take his dastardly turns, and he's just so annoying and so terrible. At one point in his jealousy, he makes Anne tell Shale to, like, go away. And I don't remember why. I don't remember why that's the case. I think maybe because he was worried that Shale would stop him from putting his next plan into motion. I think that was why, because he would have protected her. But he really is just so spoiledly despicable so much of the time. Like, he has no qualm about manipulating and using people to get what he wants, and he does that with Anne and her relationship with Shale. So he's like, tell him to go away, or I'll do... he had kidnapped Mithril, their little fairy friend, and was like, tell him to go away or I'm gonna, squeeze his wing. And destroy him or whatever. It's just, it's horrible. And it's horrible how people manipulate the fairies to get what they want. I believe it's Hugh who actually ends up doing that even with Shal. Towards the end, he steals Shal's wing and in order to get into the castle and like manipulate him. He's not as successful in the manipulation, but it's just awful what they'll do. It's very disturbing. So there is more of that whole mistreatment in there. Oh, so here's the horribleness of it, okay? So, of course, a stolen fairy's wing remains the possession of its original owner. Even so, there is still one more remaining on a fairy's back. People tie a sturdy cord around that wing and use it as reins to control the fairy. So that's what happens if people steal the fairy, but they don't have the original wing. It's just showing how they can still manipulate the fairy by use of the remaining wing. Like I think if they pull it off, the fairy might die, but they'll manipulate them by just tying and abusing that. So they can still enslave the fairy, even though its original master owns the wing. The whole treatment there is like, it's horrible. They're so mistreated, and I was like mad at Hugh when he manipulated and used Shal. Overall, this is a very short volume, as most of Sugar Apple Fairy Tale has been. However, the one problem that I do have is that the print for these, and I feel like this one in particular, is very tiny. So it took me longer to get through because it does strain my eyes more. It's more difficult for me to actually read. So I wish that there would be more printed pages and that the font would be bigger, because it's rough. Like, my eyes aren't very good. And it bothers me to read such tiny print. The standard print that's in most light novels I'm fine with, but this is just like micro print, and it bothered me reading this. I'm like, please. As usual, the insert artwork is lovely. I did also like the show. I'm starting volume 3 of the series, and I know that's going to be the final arc in season 1, and I'm a little bit trepidatious because that ends up being pretty emotional, and I'm stressed about what's going to happen in the future, because I did watch the rest of the anime, and so I'm like, oh, I don't know, am I ready to read that and then be stuck waiting for like what happens in the next segment, which I don't have yet. Like what happens after that volume, and I'm looking forward to talking about that one. I'm sure that I will, but good advancements. And if you want to follow along with Anne and Shale and Mithril, pick up volume 2 of Sugar Apple Fairy Tale, and volume 3, because that's out now. And I think I recently picked up volume 1 of the manga to see like how far that story goes and how well it's adapted, but I did not get to read it yet, so I'm looking forward to doing that as well, comparing it to this one. That's really it for this video. I would say if you are reading this, continue on reading it, because I like this series. I like also that it is bringing up the horrible nature of the treatment of the fairies. I still wish that we didn't have to deal with this and that it was just like but I guess there wouldn't be enough conflict. But anyway, it comes into major play in the next arc, I know, so I'm just like dreading it. But anyway, if you liked the first volume, if you like the anime, pick up the light novel. I really enjoyed it. That's it for this video. Until next time, bye.